Release the Kraken!
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
And trying to shift that around. And from my background as a project manager, I would look at the whole project and say, what percentage would be a reasonable target to try to reduce the overall expenditures? And whether you can easily get 10, 15, maybe 20% off the top. And that's where I would be putting my effort, would be to reduce the operating costs, because this comes in at the tail end after you've done your hard work at reducing the overhead.
Unless it's not our pie.
55% of it's your fault.
Plus, whatever comes out of these negotiations may have us all thinking differently. Once we find out what the
this
check's
number includes the $200,000
right,
lease
but
payment,
not any additional.
but not any additional. Yes.
I wanted to point out that when you're measuring a truck, that when you get a big truck over on the island, they charge you a truck and a trailer fee. So you're paying $130 plus the $29, or now it's different, you know. Add the $6 on.
Yeah, if
But
you're
paying
pulling
both
a
of those
trailer.
things. So you have to count that into when you're talking about a truck. You're paying both. When you're measuring that truck, you're measuring just the trailer and just the truck.
One of the things that we covered in an earlier evening is some of the counties have, we have 27 fare classes. For instance, we have 3 trailer classes, we have 3 truck classes, and so forth. We have 4 pedestrian classes. And some counties have a lot more than us, and some counties have less than us. And so that is one of the underlying questions is, do we want to do something like collapsing trucks and trailers, measuring by length? Because clearly a trailer and a truck are going to weigh differently, but they might be the same length.
Okay, if we're going to hear from Chandler, remember that if you can, go online, fill this thing out, and then somehow get it back to us. And that's the part I'm not sure how you do.
Yeah, if you would fill them in.
You can print it.
Print it and send it back? Or
email it.
You could also save it as a copy and then email it.
print it and email it to Kathy Berg at Comcast.net. I don't know how else to, we don't have an office.
Bring it to one, write it up and bring it to one of us. We'll get it in.
Okay, Andrew.
I was asked to go over to this side of the room, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Wasn't intended as a subtle critique. Just waiting.
Did you want to show that values thing just briefly?
Sure. So this is
No, you have to have it now.
pieces here.
What do you call this piece of paper?
It's
Fair model.
fair model.
Okay.
Fair ratio for, yeah. It's an attempt to get ratios as opposed to just go directly to fares, the ratio of the discounts or multipliers.
So the slide that Diane was referencing was this guy. The bottom half of this slide discusses the values that are value statements that are consistent with the way the ordinance is presently written. So as Diane said, frequent ferry users should pay less than visitors, not necessarily residents, just frequent users of any sort via multi-ride discounts. families with children up to 18 should have incentives to stay on the island because it's less expensive for the children to ride than for others. So Win disappears. Win is somewhere. When you were saying this is a ferry forum, right?
It's
In the document?
on the linked document that's called Fares.
Okay.
And what I'll do is, I was trying to make a list, and we can work later, of the things that people may want to go back to, so I can make a post tomorrow that links these things again, so that people don't have to.
So
It's on page 17 of your original Fares
Right.
slide presentation.
So to contextualize and triangulate relative to Diane's worksheet, you can go back and reference this document.
Yeah, I'd like to add a value that's not there, and it doesn't seem to be a value that seems important at the moment, but it has in the past, and I think it will in the future, and that's to encourage walk-on passengers. It was really true that in the 80s and 90s, to walk-on was really encouraged, and that was the reason they developed the parking lot here and on the other side to reduce ferry lines and to reduce wear and tear on the ferry and fuel costs. And those are all still taking out the kind of moral thing or whatever of different kind of a population and allowing people to get to town on public transportation. Hopefully we could someday develop a public transportation system that works with the ferry. I mean, those aren't undoable tasks, but I think that that has been an important value and just for monetary reasons could be again.
Okay, I want to address that. Right now, we're running most accepted commute times. We're running a ferry is empty. We are leaving a tremendous amount of money on the table. If the fares were lower, you would have more income from the cars. You would have more income to the system. The idea of let's all ride the bus and bicycles is really great. I will give you a perfect example of a disaster of this. The state of Washington decided to take this up, and for the Port Townsend route, they bought a 64-car ferry with 750 passenger capacity, and never have they ever carried more than 450 passengers on that route. Now, because of this, they had to add a second person in the. What I'm saying is that this is a double-edged sword. And remember, we're looking at a paradigm of a boat that isn't going to be here running full tilt much longer. It's on its way out. And so maybe we don't want to take that maybe we don't want to put that up as one of our things.
Let's certainly, should be out on the table, but there are costs, as you said. Can we, I'm sorry, I'm one of the people that has to bail out early because of the ferry.
Proceeding through an exercise very similar to the exercise that Diane just went through, but kind of from the opposite direction, if you will. I've kind of revised something that some of us went through a couple of weeks ago. So the idea is, as Diane noted, this seems slightly small. Vehicle driver punch card traffic in the first 3 months of this year has fallen 12.1% relative to the first 3 months of last year. In contrast, all other traffic has fallen about 2%. Public Works projects operating costs to be $2.67 million for 2011. Now, to Steve's point, there may be ways that we could reduce that, etc. But at present, it's $2.67 million. There's going to be $160,000 that Public Works projects will come from the state in the form of motor vehicle fuel tax deficit funding that Pat mentioned earlier. There'll also be $1,999 in interest on the ferry fund. Those two pieces of income will be deducted from the total operating costs to give us what I've called net operating costs of approximately $2.5 million. Fares have to cover 2.5 million, 55% of that 2.5 million bucks. Now, I've created, at Riley's request, I've created these boxes that are presently unpopulated. The idea here is we have to cover 55% of 2.58 million, which is carried down here, the 2.58, and 55% of that's 1.4 approximately. But it's possible that we could eliminate, say, $60,000 in parking security to a point that Stephen made earlier. It's also possible that we could create a ferry taxing district and increase revenue by $200,000. One of the things that this allows us to do is we could plug in $60,000 operating cost reduction attributable to parking, and that will net out of here. For example, I go in and I say, I think we're going to reduce costs by $60,000, and you'll see that, if I get it, you'll see that the 2.5 on the bottom falls to 2.4. This falls from 1.48 or 1.47 to 1.36, and you'll see about a $33,000 reduction in the fare box recovery requirements. We can enter numbers and test both operational scenarios and different revenue sourcing scenarios, etc. But for now, let's presume that things stay as they are. So we've got this 1.38 about $1 million. I'm going to carry that over onto the next tab here. Here's my net fare box recovery requirement of 1.38 million bucks. Now what I've done is I've taken every existing fare class. Some of these will be familiar to you. Some of them won't be familiar. They're existing fare classes for which we don't collect revenue. For example, ferry crew and families, in-school school child, county employees, county vehicles. Those people cross the boat, just no revenue is collected. The idea here is, for each of these fare classes, pedestrian cash, if you buy a ticket in cash, you go across the boat once. If you buy a pedestrian punch card with 25 punches, that buys you the right to go across the boat 25 times. In 2010, 26,750 one passage cash tickets were sold. 1,652 25-card punch cards were sold. So that means people bought the right to buy the boat 1,652 times 25, about 40,000 times. Question? Oh, no. So in 2011, based on the changes in ridership that we've seen thus far, so the approximately 12% change for vehicles, the approximately 2% change vehicles with punch cards, and the approximate 2% change for everything else, I've just extrapolated what that would suggest for 2011 ticket sales. The idea here is we can go in and we can plug in a set of fares. So this is the current set of fares after the surcharge, $7 for a pedestrian cash fare, $3.68 per trip for the needs-based pedestrian punch card, because the punch card costs $92. We can go in and we can fill in the highlighted area a set of fares corresponding to the current fare classes. And we can then see whether we expect to have a shortfall or a surplus. Right now, what that tells us is that based on what has happened with traffic in the last 3 months relative to the 3 months, same 3 months the prior year, at the current fare system, we expect that fares will meet $90,000 more than the, expect is a little strong. This suggests that that fares will bring in $90,000 more than would be required to meet the fare box recovery requirement. So the idea is that we can simulate what would happen with changing the fares themselves, and we can also simulate what would happen if we change, if you will, some environmental variables like changes in growth, changes in operating costs, if we could eliminate some, which we can address down here, changes in the 55%, etc. But assuming that the environment stays as it is, the question that I was hoping to tap into is the county, again, assuming that things stay as they are, the county has constrained us by two things: the total operating costs and the fare recovery. Those, suppose, are outside our control, at least this evening. Given those constraints, what values would we choose here? How much would it cost every time a school child went to school? Maybe the answer is 0. But the idea is that hopefully we can plug in a set of values and observe their implications at the top line here. A couple of notes. There really are, nearly everything is rounding error in the scheme of things, except for vehicle cash, vehicle punch card, and pedestrian punch card. Now, all the other little things add up to be a significant issue. Trucks, for example, the total truck traffic ends up being a big deal for total revenue. But what we'll find is, as we go through this exercise, or as we play with fares, unless we're changing one of those 4 fare classes, any minor adjustment in anything else won't have a whole lot of meaning. If you increase large trucks fares by 5%, it doesn't do anything to the bottom line, really. So anyway, what I was hoping was to solicit thoughts. Right now, we've got a $90,000 surplus with the current system of fares and the current fare classes. I was hoping to solicit thoughts on what fares we'd like to see changed, either up or down, etc. So, any thoughts?
Can I just clarify something? We have a $90,000 surplus, but I believe we owe $750,000 in the back 55%. So we have no surplus. Somehow we have to come up with that as well, correct?
I believe that's plugged into the current, that we're paying back right now.
So that's plugged into
Yeah.
these figures, basically?
I don't know if
Yes, it is.
that exists in the 2.67 million.
I believe so.
What exists is a 60,000 in the ERR account because we underpaid in past years. So we're paying 60,000 additional this year and for one more year, 3 years, and then the ERR account comes to zero, but it doesn't pay back the ferry fund.
Okay.
So it sounds like the answer is yes, we owe some number. I wasn't aware of the fact that it was 700,000, but
Maybe I'm wrong on that too.
It's the operating, it's not just ERR, it's everything. So.
it's some non-zero number that we owe. Yes, this is just a snapshot in time. Right now,
I'm totally confused, excuse me. This says assumptions based on current situation, and we end up with a projected shortfall
That's the other
of
one.
minus down here in the blue.
2 different exercises.
I understand that, but you said it based on exactly what we're paying now. Isn't that, forget how you do here and there and whatever.
You reduce some of the cost.
All right, I'm just too dense to.
Which cell or which box?
She's on the other page.
She's on
in
the
the
other
last
wall.
presentation.
Yeah, she's in the wrong. But you're saying that you're using for this extrapolation all the same fares? The current fares?
The current
Exactly
fares.
how it is.
Every current fare class, every current fare.
And in the last presentation, I entered numbers I liked as far as the percentage discount. And so that makes a difference. I mean, if you decide to discount something 50% instead of 75.
But I thought I know you did when you went in and filled in the blanks, but on the sheet, this blue number, at the top it says assumptions based on current situation. So we assumed that was as it is,
No,
not the plugged in.
that's all zeros.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's the confusion.
The assumptions were the change rate, in the number of rides and
So
the
that was just
total
an
amount.
example. I think that was, right.
Yeah. Just an example.
Okay.
So, is anyone interested in taking a stab forward? What would we change about the current fare system? There are a lot of things we don't like, so what would we change?
Go back to 2010.
Go back to 2010?
Go back to 2010.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I like that number.
Actually, what happened was let's do this.
It's hard to do these real time. They work on your computer at home just fine, you know.
You guys are doing an incredible job.
Negative $417,000.
Okay, Chairman, now take away the decline.
Oh, take away the reduction in
Take
traffic.
away the reduction in traffic.
So we just need to go over this.
Well,
Negative $350,000.
No, that's how much money we need to get out of the system. Yes.
And what's that percentage?
What's the question?
What is the percentage?
You mean the recovery percentage?
No, if you took your budget,
Oh.
and we have to make up 300.
It's about 35%. Well, actually, it's about 30% of what it would have to be.
Not too hard.
30% of it.
Huh?
That's a lot.
No, it's not impossible.
If you look, if any of you are proponents of Paul Akers and some other people, the lean system, this is routinely what they do in private enterprise. Just take 30% out of the budget, routinely, by economies of scale, by looking for ways in the system, saving time. This is routine. And the thing about it is you lower the fares, you're going to get more people coming across.
That's right.
You see, it's the whole thing, it's marketing. You look at several things. You go someplace, let's say somebody makes a coffee pot, and they want $10 for it wholesale level. And somebody says, well, I need 25%, so it's going to cost you $12.50. And you go to the guy and they say, well, it's going to cost $12.50 because we're going to mark it up 25%. Your marketing officer says, I'm not going to sell any coffee pots at $12.50. But on the other hand, if I only mark it up 10%, I'm going to sell 1 million of them. Who gets the more money? The guy that marks it up 25% or the guy that marks it up 10? We've got to start looking at that kind of way of doing
Who
business.
makes more money, McDonald's or a fancy restaurant?
Right.
Yeah.
So the thing is, we have to look at a marketing way of doing business.
I'm going to try and dispel two myths. I'm going to stick my foot in my mouth, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to try and dispel two myths that have lived on the island at least since the 80s. One, pedestrian well, let's disregard the 80s. Let's say in the last 5 years. As fares have risen, people have driven less and they have walked on more.
That's a myth.
That is a myth. If you look at certain data sets, they suggest that that's true. It's completely a byproduct of the introduction of needs-based tickets and the fact that needs-based passages on the boat exist as a separate column in the data sheet. 100% of those are added back in as pedestrian traffic. And so if you look at the two trend lines, it looks like pedestrian traffic has been rising for the last, falling less quickly than vehicle traffic for the last 5 years, only because they're double counting that every needs-based pedestrian vehicle as a pedestrian traffic, or pedestrian item. That will disappear now because needs-based trips no longer appear on the trip sheets. In fact, vehicle traffic in the last 5 years has fallen 18.12%, and pedestrian traffic has fallen 18.11%. That's all
Who's
class.
parking their car over there?
I don't know. I don't know. But it is. So that's fine. If anybody, I'd be very interested in if anyone can find a piece of data that demonstrates any causal link between an increase in fares and substitution effects from driving into pedestrian traffic. Another myth, just seconds. Another myth. If anyone can find any study on transportation in which an increase in tolls, because basically we pay a toll. You can think of it as a toll bridge, a toll tunnel, whatever, it's a toll. If anyone can find any study on tolls in which total revenue went down when the toll went up, I'd love to see it. It was discouraging as I read, I kid you not, 30 years of history on tolls. And from around the world, long-term and short-term effects. Fares go up, ridership goes down, but the net increase in fares overwhelms the reduction in ridership. The Washington State Ferry System contracted a study of exactly this question in 2009. What they found is basically an increase of, the easiest way to say it is an increase of 100% in the fares would have reduced traffic by 20%. So they would have seen, I mean, you figure that out, that's a 60% increase in total revenue if they'd increased fares. That is not a road we want to go down. I know it's something we love to talk about, but it's really discouraging to see the results. Steve?
Wasn't there some data from the 80s as when Bud Jewell talked them into reducing the fares, that ridership went up and revenue went up even though the fares were almost cut in half?
There are two things that are a problem there. There are a variety of changes that happen. One is you've got massive changes in macroeconomic context, but the other thing that's more easily grasped is they simultaneously eliminated the commuter fare. So you used to be able to buy these, I believe they were 3-month passes. You used to be able to buy a 3-month pass. They eliminated the 3-month pass, and guess what? Punch card ticket sales went way up. Well, the 3-month pass was
A deal.
I don't remember what it sold for, but you only had, it was like 1.5 punch cards. So for a commuter, all of a sudden their purchase of tickets just doubled. So yes, they reduced the fare, they reduced the cash fares, but that's not actually what made up the difference. It was that they migrated people out of the commuter tickets and into the punch cards. So
the other thing I think had a real impact was the change in the economy hit at just that time. We had been in a real slump where you couldn't sell houses. The Canadian dollar was like 85 cents of the American dollar. And just at that time, all of a sudden property on the island began to be attractive again and people got jobs.
So I have a, not to take away from this exercise, but and I'm sorry if I missed this, but the decrease in the 12.1% decrease that we saw in the first 3 months, is there any kind of data to suggest what that decrease is from? Is it because people stopped driving that had the ability to not drive, people who didn't have to go to town daily to work? Or was it moved into a different category, or?
Not sure, but a couple of notes. One thing that immediately pops into mind is surcharge. Except it only happened to vehicle drivers.
No,
The reduction. The fall in traffic, the 12% reduction in traffic only happened to vehicles, not pedestrians. In terms of why the first 3 months of this year, I don't know, but oddly enough, the same thing has actually been happening since December of 2010. Vehicle driver traffic has been falling at a more rapid rate than any other fare class, continually for the last 15 months.
And this is based on the punch card, right? The 12% decreases if you have a punch card.
It's based on, it is, oddly enough, non-punch card vehicle driver traffic has not fallen nearly as much.
Gas prices would affect how many people take trips.
Well, it doesn't affect me because I go to town every day. I don't get a choice of ferry goes up, gas goes up, you know, I mean.
I think what you're seeing here is that the part of the cash fare didn't go down because people cannot afford to kick out that much money for the punch card. The second thing, the pedestrian didn't go down as much because the people can only pay so much, and so you're going to walk across. And I can tell you this, that from somebody who comes home late, that parking lot over there is fuller than I've ever seen it for this time of year.
There's something that has intrigued me ever since I saw Fred Kenny's presentation at the Flip. Fred delved into this stuff pretty deeply. And he made the point that as he looked across, I don't know how many years it was, but I think back into the 90s, and I've been seeing this thing happen where we had to bring the, multi-trip together to the full price from at one point it was 90 cents and $1. So you didn't really care if you had multi-pass or not.
Oh, right.
And they did that to bring get more people to start using the ferry at that point, because a lot of people were coming as visitors, and we'd all pick them up, and they were you know, walking them. But he made the point that as the walk-on rate and the drive-on rate diverge, they get wider apart, the ferry fare income goes down. And in my mind, two factors will make me walk on. One is going to be the top end. Suddenly I'm going to have to pay too much to bring my vehicle on. But the other driving factor is going to be that difference. And the more we can keep that, I know a lot of people aren't going to want to hear this, but the more we keep that difference together, the more we're going to fill up that boat. And the more
That's where we are right now, there's hardly any difference, and we're not filling up the boat.
What do you mean? There's a difference between $4.80 to $9.60. That's quite a bit of a difference. And I guess, I'm not sure what I think about this, but I think that the point is that if you get those two diverging apart, you lose money, because the ferry's not filled up. And the only way we're going to really make money is not to have it sitting in the running partially empty. We need, and I know you can't fill it up in the 11 o'clock boat or something, but we need it filled up. But we need to make it more attractive, and I don't like long lines, but we need to make it more attractive for walk-ons to drive-ons. I really believe that, in order to get income, to get revenue.
There's
drive-ons would pay.
Jim and I walked through this experiment, and I don't have, actually I do, just 1 second. One of the things you've got to realize is if you, see if I can unhide the right column here, that's always a trick. One of the things, I mentioned earlier that the 4 gorillas in the room are punch card and cash, vehicle driver, and pedestrian traffic. Those four fare classes. And if you were to reduce vehicle, and vehicles are the bulk of it. If you were to reduce the vehicle fare by a couple of dollars, hoping to incent more passengers to drive on, the number, you basically have to incent everyone. Because the difference is $4.80 right now, right, between the punch cards. If you reduced vehicle fares by $2 and every single person that has a pedestrian punch card drove on, you'd still lose money because you'd be costing $2 more. You'd be collecting $2 less on every vehicle.
So what if you did the other thing, especially if you weren't going to charge for parking on the other side and raise the pedestrian to $2? Now we're going to see more people start to drive on, and you're going to have, I know pedestrians don't want to hear this, but in my mind, if I'm going to walk on, that's going to be a big factor. If I'm going to take my car out, how much money do I save? It's going to be $2 or $5.
I think that
Who all
might go
drive
back to the long question, to me it does, because.
I'd like to point out that I'd like to point out that I have looked at a few of those studies myself, and the fare elasticities that they quote don't exist on Lummi Island. You know, most toll type systems have drive-arounds, so that when the price of a subway or a bridge or something gets too expensive, you can drive around it. You can go a different path. So we have a very limited elasticity, a fare elasticity here on the island. And
see, even those fare elasticities are like -0.2 to -0.5.
Right.
Here they're going to be like -0.1.
almost nothing here, so it takes really dramatic changes to drive people from one fare class to another. We have very limited elasticities here.
Thank you, that's absolutely true. Yeah, you find the same thing over and over, going, whether it's tollways in Spain or bridges in the San Francisco Bay Area or tunnels between Jersey and New York.
The one thing that is true though, at least in the transit industry, is that people over time, over a period of years, will choose differently. Their kids will get through high school, they'll get their house ready to market, the market will be better, and they move. And I do know that there's been some movement off the island in the last year.
I've seen suggest it takes almost a year for a fare change to significantly change ridership. Because people have to adjust. You have to figure out,
longer.
Sell your car, move somewhere, do, you know, whatever.
So do people want to toss out numbers and Chandler can plug them in and you can see what would happen? For example, your theory that if you close together on cars and passenger fares. Let's see what would happen.
Maybe you try one where you lower the vehicle $1 and raise the passenger $1 and sort of see where that takes.
Okay, so I will, I'll raise both the pedestrian punch card and pedestrian cash fares $1, sort of $2.60 and $5 respectively. Oh, you know what?
You're on 2010. Well, I don't think that's a good place to start.
Well, let's start with the way things are right now, because that gives us some perspective of where they'd be changing from to. So if we were to raise pedestrians by $1, $5.60, and if we were to reduce vehicles by $12, or excuse me,
$2.
like $2 worth it? No.
The same $1. $1.
So $8, $5.60, and if we were to reduce that to $12, this is an obsolete fare class, but we still have some information from it. But this is the guy that just kills it. So now we lost $20,000 because we used to have a $90,000 surplus.
But we can't figure out how many of those pedestrians might now start driving.
But
And that's the big factor there. That's the big key. How many people are going to say, well, geez, now it's only $2 or $3, this, maybe I'll drive on.
I'll say this, I'd be one of them.
There you go. And it's convenient so that maybe you work, and you're not spending more gas because you're going to drive the vehicle either way.
I propose that I realize this is obnoxious if nothing else, but I propose that for our purposes, we don't even engage in those questions because we don't have the data to measure it, and we won't have the data to measure it by August. And if we did, it's very possible that we wouldn't like the results. I know none of those things are popular to say, but they're all probably true. So let's stick with what we expect ridership to be. And I know it's not perfect. And I hate to keep beating that drum because I know it's not. But it's the best we got. But you're right. Some people would. Yeah.
Has there been any consideration of like a reservation system? For those commuters who really need to be somewhere, I suspect many would be willing to pay an extra couple of bucks to reserve a place on the boat.
Chandler, I can address that a little bit. It would be very, very expensive to implement a reservation system. The software, the implementation, the maintenance, it would not be affordable for this size of a ferry. Alaska Railroad's summer reservations only, I think we paid $200,000-300,000 back in the early 90s for a reservation system. And that was not reserved seats. You know, so it would just be outrageously expensive. It's not cost effective.
I'd like to see, what happens if we raise the vehicle cash to 15?
Should I go back to what it was?
Please.
Okay, so we raise vehicle cash to 15. One thing, for whatever it's worth, one thing that several members of the crew told me was that they would love to see $5 increment cash fares. Because it makes the change really easy.
They like punch cards.
But they're going to electronic for this.
Well, they'll still have to collect cash apparently. Pat, tell me if I'm wrong, but the law says you have to be able to collect cash for fares.
Yeah. No, it doesn't.
No.
There is an RCW, and I actually researched today, and I have it with me, that municipalities means any government entity, must, they basically have to discriminate between cash and credit card unless they pass an ordinance or a resolution that says that they will absorb that. And that was the key thing that I was missing when I talked to you this weekend. But for example, the city of Union Gap, Snohomish County have ordinances that say that the overhead will be, or the fees for the credit card processing will become part of the overhead, and they won't charge separately for that.
I think I phrased the question poorly. I mean, does Rich Hudson on the Whatcom chief have to have the capacity to allow you to pay him cash to get across the boat?
I don't know if there's an ordinance on that, but almost certainly he's going to have to be able to do that.
Yeah,
because
legal
it's not
tender.
Alaska Airlines that
It's
can
legal
say we're
tender.
not
He's
taking
gotta take
cash.
it.
Legal tender.
Legal tender, okay, so, yeah, Pat and I had been discussing whether or not they also, whether if you took credit card payment, you had to charge a service fee, basically, so that.
Well, Chandler, now that you've got a surplus because of the 15, can you change pedestrian cash to 5?
Sure.
Would that, I mean, let's, $5 increments. So you
Still in a
could-
surplus.
Don't change that to Dan.
Yeah,
Two things, I'm wondering if this could be put online so that we could all fiddle with it, and that way we could get on to Dan Dickinson's presentation. Not that I'm not enjoying it, people are leaving like flies there.
Oh,
And second of all, why couldn't there be a meter, installed on either side, or on one side of the ferry, like when you buy a ticket that you paste on your car window to park? Right. And you just put your credit card in it or cash.
I can answer that. Those machines cost, ruggedized, they're at least $90,000. Yeah. For a machine to be able to that spits out like a parking pass.
Really,
That's
cities put them all over their cities. It's hard to
those,
figure
well, yeah, and then maybe one smaller one, but that's, you have timing that's involved with that, because those I think are just for 2 hours. How would you handle multi-day parking?
No,
There are a lot of
it'd be a
issues
single
with
one, I
that.
think. It'd be for a single fare.
She's talking about for
Oh, for ferry fare? Oh, for that, you definitely, that would be the $90,000 machine.
That's interesting, because the city we live in, the rest of the year is very poor, and they have a lot of them, and I don't see how they can afford them.
I don't know, maybe they had a grant.
This exercise is on the Ferry Forum, and I don't know what the title of it is. Do you remember, Wayne?
it's an earlier version.
No, and I think when I do a post tomorrow, I'll try to find the links to all of these things we've been talking about tonight, people have asked about, and just put up a series, sort of like, here's Chandler's spreadsheet, and here is the values, and so that once again, maybe that'll help people find what they want in terms of trying things out.
You specifically, would that be okay? Because I don't think we're gonna get any further with this tonight, unless you have more.
I don't.
And,
Well, we need
I have one question before we get into Jim's. Jim's gonna do a 5-minute recap on the things that he's learned about the needs for a new ferry and some of the research that he's done, which is extensive. But I need to ask our committee before we do that. We're at a point where it would probably be helpful for people if we had a list of recommendations, recommended fares, recommended cost savings, and we, talking to others, feel as though we're probably ready to at least make this proposal, and then there will be something more specific to react to, so that we don't have a meeting scheduled for next week. It's the 9th of May.
So it would be the 16th.
No, what I'm suggesting is that we do meet on the 9th. Diane can't do that? Because I'm gone on the 16th, and Chandler's gone most of June. And I'm gonna miss 2 meetings as well. But what I was hoping is that we could get together, do a draft. You could do 1, 2, and next week. Make it a work session, not necessarily interactive. All of our meetings are open to the public, and you're welcome to hear us dither and wrestle. But if we just do a work session with our own group next week, is that agreeable to our task force? We had a holiday, and I'm proposing that we
not have a holiday.
work on that holiday.
And the 16th doesn't work.
I'm gone
Oh,
until June 2. He's gone from the 6th to July, so 7th to July. So if we can do that, we'll be, if that's agreeable with everybody, we'll meet here.
I so move.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
will get the building reserve.
Okay,
Will
and
you want the slide projector?
And if we could bring our, on paper, bring our recommendations or, you know, so that we're not wrestling about with it here. And so it's all virtually ready to put together and we can debate the points, not what goes into it. I think that would be helpful.
absolutely, absolutely, and I'd be kind of a taskmaster again. Is this a time when we've got to cut bait, I think is it.
So are we invited to that or
You're
not?
always welcome to any
Right,
of
but it
our
won't be
meetings,
like this.
but
It
we're
won't
not
be-
gonna, we're gonna have to really struggle among ourselves to at least make a first cut at a proposal. Before we go, we have 5 minutes before we have to go to get.
And I won't go potty.
Oh,
You can,
Ferry.
you want me to carry on here a little bit?
yes, if Jim could kind of run through what he's learned about ferries.
Well, there's a whole bunch of things, and this is an involved process, there's no doubt about it. The first thing we have to come up under the realization is the Whatcom chief is 49 years old. It is on the way out. The assertions of a certain marine surveyor a few years ago when the new ferry was not built have not come to pass. The thing is now costing more to keep than it is to replace. It has gone over that magic little peak number where, I'm not saying throw it away, but to where it's costing more in maintenance costs than it would be to buy a new one. There's a ton of different things we have to look at. A couple of things when looking at a new vessel or a used vessel. There are almost no used vessels available in the continental United States, and you have to use, you can't buy one from Canada or somewhere else because of the laws, the Jones Act of 1920. You're going to have to use a U.S. built vessel. And I've got to go on the 910 also. There are two, the Lummi Ferry dock is configured so there's only two local vessels that'll fit it, and that's the Whatcom Chief and the Guaymas. There are no, please, get this through your mind, no replacement vessels on the entire United States West Coast, and possibly one or two on the whole United States coast, used vessels that we get our hands on. They will not fit the dock. My first thing would be to widen the docks and take the largest vessel in the county fleets, which is a Silicon 2 of Pierce County. And it wouldn't affect the current operation. It would also allow for 6 different small state ferries to use the docks. Available vessels coming up, there are 2 that I can think of. One is officially not for sale, but we may be able to swing a deal with it a couple of years. I've talked to the owners, and that's Pierce County's Christine Anderson, 1994. The other one is one out of, that's any good, is out of Lake Champlain, and that's a long way to get here. Price isn't bad, and actually that's one that would fit the docks. But then again, you don't have a reserve. One of the things that I wanted to bring up is that keeping the Whatcom Chief as a reserve, because then we don't have the losses of revenue during downtime. We do, it can also be by Skagit and San Juan counties. And we put it into a fund, and it also changes the paradigm of repair. Going to the shipyard is like paying premium prices. You can do everything on that boat except under the water line, under the rub rails. It can be done on the water by local crews and tie up, and that would go for the operating vessel too. We could probably save it. I know we can save. Pierce County's doing it, and Washington State Ferry does it right now. A tremendous amount of money by going to every other year dry dock and doing the maintenance in other ways. There's all kinds of other ways to do things. We go into other things of the sub-chapters and the different costs or whatever. One thing you don't want to do, you never want to build a one-off boat. Because that boat is burdened with all the engineering and all the applications of building a fleet. You want to find one that's designed somewhere and use the design. Because that way, first of all, you know what's gonna go wrong with it, things always do. Classic would be the Issaquah class events of the state of Washington, if you wanna talk about a nightmare. And the other thing is that the engineering and the application engineering, what I mean by that is the steel cutting, it's all done computerized. It's easily, you could easily pour $200,000 into visualizing the plan of the computer steel cutting. And that's all done. So that's where you want to be looking at. There's a ton of different things. Propulsion system. The most efficient is a controllable pitch propeller. Probably the least efficient is the Voight-Schneider drive system. The Texas State Ferries is abandoning them. The cost of operation of these things, the maintenance is horrendous. They're going to our quart nozzle system, which is a modified propeller system. There's tons of different things to go through this. I hate to say this. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wondered, I'm a specific person, but the Christine Anderson.
Yes.
Yes, what kind of boat is that? How many cars is it carrying? How much
It'll
does
carry,
it cost?
it'll carry 54. It was built for $5 million in 1994. I think a reasonable price today, considering the replacement cost would be out $13 million, would be probably around 7.
And why do they want to sell it?
The Anderson Island is growing. They're starting to overwhelm the 54-car ferry. And they may consider, they will in the next few years probably be building about a 66-car ferry built on the newer platform, the Stillicum 2, which is a descendant of the Christine Anderson. And at that point, they wouldn't need 3. They want to keep a spare.
But won't that take much more fuel and a larger crew?
No, it won't. It will run with the same crew under 150 passengers. And being you probably run it once an hour, it will burn about 2/3 of fuel.
And where's the house on it?
Up top.
In the middle or in the center?
It's a good looking boat. I got a picture over here. Oh, you can.
ADA?
It meets ADA requirements and everything. Yeah, I've got pictures of it. It's a very pretty vessel. Very pretty vessel.
You want pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very pretty vessel. There's all kinds of different things. There's a Christine Anderson. It's a good looking boat, but compared to what we've got, it's going to be a lot.
Would it fit the dock?
No. It may fit this one, it certainly will not fit the Gooseberry Point dock.
They'd have to be rebuilt.
They have to be rebuilt anyway.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's a ton of different things to go through. They're going to draw more water, a little bit, not a lot. The Stillicum 2, which is the bigger version, draws 8.5 feet. This one draws 7. But then again, this one wouldn't fit in the ferry dock when they moved it, and they had to actually, by running it, the bottom kind of got deeper.
Would the Christine Anderson go anywhere other than Gooseberry?
Well, it would be better to go to Bellingham with than this one, but no, it's still not big enough.
How about
Slater?
Slater Road, it would be on the edge.
On the edge is okay.
So I have a question, I never thought of this, is it any part of the negotiations with the Lummi tribe if we have to rebuild the docks? Because the Whatcom Chief is in the last 25 more years.
No, Whatcom
So
Chief,
this is all gonna happen.
in its current running, from my guessing, talking to the shipyard, they've worked on it, has got about 2 years left.
So it isn't a part of the current negotiations if we have to change the dock configuration?
No, and one of the issues is that the county paid quite a lot for a ferry design back a few years ago that would fit the current dock, but wouldn't be able to go to, would have the same problems going to Bellingham as our current boat.
If anybody wants us, here's some pictures. That being said.
Is that it? If anyone could help chairs and tables, that would be greatly appreciated.
I'm gonna,
Oh yeah, I have to go right now.